All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Here's your market update for the week. And of course, always we're going to look into next week. As you know, big week ahead of us. We have the big earnings report from Apple, Meta, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon coming up next week. But overall, the market performed well this week. As you can see, the Dow Jones up 700 points on the day. Green week across the board for the Dow Jones, S&P 500, NASDAQ, and the IWM Russell. The VIX closed under the 30 mark, which is interesting. And a lot of this is, today at least, the market actually opened up pretty red this morning. And then, of course, the market rebounded throughout the day. And part of that was there was an article released by the Wall Street Journal indicating or signaling that a 75 basis points in November would be obviously the next rate hike. And then, of course, they also indicated potentially a pivot or a lower rate hike going into December. And that's what got the markets to rally. If we look at the Fed Watch tool here, the CME tool, it's pricing in currently for 75 basis points. And the odds of the December rate hike is actually going up a little bit here of a 50 basis points going into December. So they will meet it again in December. Just a heads up, the FOMC does meet the week after next. Okay, so they will be coming out with their rate decision on November 2nd. And that will be at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And there's going to be volatility in the markets. But besides that, let's go ahead and talk about what's happened this week and what we can expect going into the following week. As always, I always like to start with my McKellen oscillator. All right. This is the NASDAQ 100. As you can see on the weekly here, we held the lower band. And also the daily band is looking actually really productive. Okay, so you got money coming into the markets, buying the dip, etc. It's held the middle band, and potentially a target would be above 11,600. If we go to the S&P 5 on the weekly, looking at the B bands again, as you can see, last week we held that, and this week was a nice hollow candle. 3,900 will be a potential target if, of course, the companies reporting next week are productive and they surprise on the most part. All right, so before I get into that, so let's obviously look at Qs, my favorite. This is if you guys are new to our trading group or if you're looking into joining us, for the most part, we do trade the Qs and the mega caps. Okay, sometimes we'll swing shares on small caps, etc. But for the most part, we're not swinging much this week lately, but just day trading options. All right, so the Qs is something that I track personally quite often, more than not, than any other tickers. All right, so today we did have higher volume, which is a good indicator, above the 20 SMA on the volume. In fact, we actually had the highest volume day on the week. All right, this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. A lot of low volume selling yesterday, and of course today was good, pretty decent volume. And you can see down this downward trend here, we're starting to break out of it. All right, now where we go, obviously, I'm going to put a target. This should be relatively simple for the market to do, and that is to fill the gap to that 279.48, 280 mark, and we'll go from there. The earnings start on Tuesday with Microsoft and Google. All right, so those are going to be the two big ones, and of course Meta on Wednesday, Amazon and Apple remaining on Thursday. So the market's going to be kind of on the edge, right? Going into Monday, Tuesday, waiting for those big earnings. Remember, when the market was waiting for Tesla and Netflix, we consolidated quite a bit until today. We finally started breaking out. Now, part of that too is the DXY, the dollar index is down. The yields are starting. The 10-year yields came down a little bit today as well. So the market was pretty ecstatic about in regards to that. Now, I simplified my charts. As you see my charts, this is a little bit more simplified version. The white line that you see here is the 20 SMA. All right, so that's what I'm tracking with this particular chart, and we did close above that. And this would be the first time that we closed above the SMA 20 since back here, right? back in October, I'm sorry, August 19th. So that's about 2 months ago that we were able to overcome that SMA 20. So you can get a sense, obviously, with the closing of the SMA 20, there is good momentum. All right, there's good volume to back up this green engulfing candlestick today. So my target next week, at least on Monday, I think we will finally fill that gap. And then we're going to start consolidating, waiting for those earnings on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I will definitely like, if we do dip on Monday, I do think that it's going to, if the markets somehow open up red or some news over the weekend, I do think that we can expect at least a pullback back to the SMA 20, which would be the 272 area, or right under 272. So that would be a support level. And of course, 270 would be a psychological support going into Monday. So I'm going to place a target of 279.48 on this momentum, and then we'll have to go from there to see if we can get any good earnings out of Microsoft and Google to start with. Now, regarding this chart, also, I'm not saying we're going to go to 300 next week, but we still have a gap to fill at this level. Okay, and here on a daily chart, you don't see it, but then there is a gap near the 260 level here as well that was created by the big gap down last week, I believe, right? Last Friday or Thursday, there was a big gap down. So that gap has to get filled, but this gap is starting to get interesting. We do have some supply area once we start approaching that 290, 295 level. And this is where we previously sold off around this range. But it'll be really interesting to see if the market is really excited about the upcoming earnings. As you know, Netflix did beat on their earnings and increased guidance or improved guidance. So that's part of the reason Netflix did actually go over. I believe Netflix actually finally broke out today from the right under 280. It kept getting rejected under 280, and it actually hit 289, 290. So 300. I mean, it is in the gap zone. If you look at Netflix here, with some ways to go to 332. If the big tech continues to improve on their earnings or report great earnings, but there is a gap down here as well, the 262 down to 250. So you got to watch out for that. But definitely, I think this is catching a lot of bears off guard here to see Netflix finally moving into this gap and closer on closing it out. Now, this is, of course, a simplified chart. If you guys want some more complexity, I'll move over to this chart for you. Like I said, there's a gap here that needs to get filled, and there's a gap down here that needs to get filled as well. Now, if you look at the EMA 3450, right, this has always been, not always, but this has been a place of contention since September 2nd. All right. So this is quite a nice run, but can we actually start moving into this cloud? For me, the run up is really going to start if we can have 915 or 3450 crossover. That'll be a nice run up and a good trend to follow, like long calls here. But until that time, we're still relatively bearish and we're still in this downtrend. I think once we break out of 284, 285, I think that'll be where the market actually, you'll see more higher volumes going into the rest of the, I guess, the midterm season, right? So once again, a good volume today. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weekly chart since we're here, and I'll start moving into the earnings here in a little bit. So on the weekly, looks like the Qs, we still have some work to do, right? We have actually we had good volume today, but overall on the week, it wasn't as great in terms of the volume, but definitely better than, 2 weeks ago. We still got some work to do. SMA 20 here is at 293.56. So we still got quite a bit of work to actually start moving past this. If you remember back in these areas here and here, once we started breaking at SMA 20 on the weekly, the price starts weakening. Okay, so that's going to be an area to watch. So let's go back to the daily once again here. All right. So anyway, upside target, I think, once again, we're going to fill this gap at the 279 level, 280 level, and let's take it from there. It could gap up on Monday to fill that gap and consolidate a bit, and we'll see where the action goes. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at Apple to start with. Okay, I'll just do it alphabetically here. This is an area of prior breakout back in July here. Okay, and you can see that once we went under here, this zone here became what a resistance, right? And it had become a resistance as of earlier this week, but finally we broke out of that resistance. And we even closed above the SMA 20. And guess what, folks? There are some gaps up here to fill. Not saying that we're going to run here next week on earnings, but they do report on Thursday afternoon. Personally, I'd like to see a dip here so I can grab some Apple shares or potentially play the earnings. But if I were to place a upside target on Apple earnings going into next week, all right. I personally, I'm very bullish on Apple. All right. I do think they're going to have great earnings. I do believe that their record iPhone sales and across the world, but there is that little kink that's happening, right? They keep reporting this iPhone production, iPhone 14 Plus. They're taking down the production demand, or because of demand, they're cutting production. But that doesn't mean that the Pro Max is the one that is selling, right? Because usually people do buy the Pro Max. I've always bought the Pro Max version, the biggest iPhone I can get. So if we do kind of get a run up on Monday, I would say that we're going to be met with the resistance, obviously at 150, right? 150 is going to be a psychological resistance. If it runs past that before the earnings on Thursday, I think it might be even sell the news. But I'm going to put an upside target of 150. All right, for Apple going into this week, and we'll go from there. If we take a look at the weekly real quick here, again, this is the area of contention, right? There's a lot of action around this area, whether it's going to lose support or break resistance. We'll see where we go, but this is where we pretty much are at this point. We still got some work to do. Apple still got some work to do to break over that 150 mark. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about Google. All right. Google, I am particularly bullish on. And the reason for that is because, so what if, Snap, if you guys saw Snap earnings, Snap actually beat their earnings, but the guidance was down. Okay. But Snap does not have the platform that, Google obviously has. And the big one is going to be YouTube. So there's going to be eyes on the YouTube earnings and ad revenue from there. We had a very bullish engulfing candlestick today with Google here. So we did play Google this week and today as well. It took like 25% Google profit here. I will reload going into Monday, but we have a big old gap here at the 110 level and 110 to 110.88. So 110 and 111. So if Google has astounding earnings, I feel like we can tap and break this 111 mark and potentially go even higher. Okay. And the reason I'm saying that is because the most tech has been beaten down pretty rough, right? Even with the last earnings where we gapped up, okay, we have given up those gains ever since the last earnings back in July here. All right. If you remember Google, Google here, all right, reported earnings on July 26th, I believe, and then we ran up big time, and of course we pulled back. Okay, so I'm going to place the upside target of 110 or 111 after earnings for Google. And so let's go ahead and go to Microsoft, also reporting on Tuesday as well. And if you happen to notice throughout the charts I've been showing you, have you noticed the diamond bottom pattern? Okay, this typically starts to happen, all right, when things are about to squeeze. The diamond pattern, diamond tops are pretty accurate or pretty on point indicators here. Now with Microsoft, you have a gap at the 244, 245 level and another gap here to 260. I'm going to say after earnings, again, I'm bullish on all the tech earnings because the prices are, in my opinion, are quite depressed here. So an upside target on earnings would be a 250, would be 250 for me. Looking at this pattern here where we chopped around and couldn't break out the 250 mark prior about 2 weeks ago, I do think we're going to break through, and we do have very good or decent volume, higher volume on the rise today from Microsoft as well. So I'm going to put that there as a potential target. All right, let's talk about Meta. I do hold a Meta position. As you know, I talked about this in our group, with Snap's down 25%. It took Meta with it, with the gap down. But look at that. I mean, we gapped down to started the day at 125 and we finished the day at 130. Okay. So it's going to fill this gap first to 132, 131 range, and we'll go from there. But I do like Meta as well going into earnings. All right, so I'm going to put an upside target that we could potentially reach that 138 mark again. This is an area where we chopped around before falling off. Um, there is a gap up here, 160 range. If Meta does very, very well, man, you could see Meta squeezing. And this is one of those volume runners. When the markets do well, Meta tends to do very well above Microsoft and Google. So this can squeeze quite a bit. Now, I'm not going to put a target there, but look at this volume today on Meta, right? People buying the dip, right? I mean, it's not rocket science to have bought the dip on Meta today. Highest volume we have seen since what? Since the selling volume back in July 28th. That's crazy. All right. So 130, it's got to, I think it's going to fill this gap on Monday. All right. Maybe a potential gap up just to fill that gap and we'll go from there. But on the earnings side, I'm going to say 137 or 138 is going to be the post ER. Have you noticed the trend here, guys? I'm bullish on all top 5 earnings tomorrow, just because of the price action. And I still believe that these top 5 companies are going to report decent enough results where it's not going to be worse than expected. Plus, the big news is that potentially the market is going to start flipping or turn bullish because what, right? Fed may pivot. I don't, I'm going to leave. That's all speculation for now. Who knows? We're just going to play today. All right. So that's Meta. All right. So the last one, we'll talk about Amazon going into earnings as well. Amazon here, if you remember back on the last earnings here, they closed at about 119 and they actually opened at 134 the next day. All right. I mean, I understand the fact that, hey, business may be slowing down on Amazon, et cetera, but these companies tend to do well. So with the prices coming up towards this prior time where we gapped up, I'm going to put a target here that before earnings, we could possibly see 120 or 122 resistance here. Then we go from there. So remember, back on October 4th, we rejected this area. We held this area and gapped up. Okay. So if we're back to these 122 levels before earnings, we do have a gap that needs to get filled, right? It's tiny, but it's something. Right about here, you have a gap to fill. All right. And then once again, you have another gap to fill here in the 130, above 130 to about 134 here. So upside target, if they do well on earnings, and I do believe that they will, I'm going to see this gap filled first. And if they do, if it's better than expected, listen, folks, this is going to gap fill. All right. So I'm going to be bullish on all 5 earnings going into this following week. Again, price action is king. All right. Volume needs to be there. But so far, going into this earnings season, I do believe that these companies should beat, number one, and they should have potentially improved guidance as well. So remember, last quarter, when everything was already beat down already, everybody was so darn bearish, okay, across the board. And these top 5 companies, the big 5, as I call them, they all did well last earnings, okay? So, we'll see what happens, all right? No telling what's going to happen. But again, Microsoft, Google Tuesday, Meta Wednesday, Amazon, Apple on Thursday. And we'll go from there. And the following week is probably going to be another volatile week because that's the FOMC. All right, folks. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you're on YouTube, please give me a thumbs up, a like, subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are not familiar with the rock trading, please go to Not the Farmer's Dog. That's my pet's website. Please go to visit therocktradingco.com. I usually post my videos here, and you can join our group for $69. When you do that, I donate $100 to local and international Christian organizations to spread the good word of the gospel, and in addition to serve the needs of the hungry. As you know, in Pakistan, they're dealing with floods. In various parts of the country, it is forbidden to preach the word or to speak about Christ. This is I believe that this is a worthy cause. If you like to trade with us. And, we do live trading pretty much every day now. So you can actually look at my 5-minute charts, and we just literally trade off that every single day. So if you are looking for a group to trade with, feel free to join us at therockTradingCode.com. Other than that, I will see you guys next week.